What happened to me was that I had somebody had swerved into my lane and resulted in a head-on collision. In the accident, I had shattered my right heel bone and fractured a disc in my spine, and numerous soft tissue injuries. I had quite substantial whiplash, bruising in my ribs, bruising in my legs, 2 required surgeries to try to repair the damage, of which the damage in my heel was never repaired, back to fully functional. First or second day being in the hospital, I realized that I would need a lawyer to be involved. I really didn't know, I wasn't really capable of managing everything that had taken place. And my fiance at the time, she had contacted a Toronto law firm, a well-known law firm that is advertising regularly on television. And they had responded to the phone call and sent someone out the following day to the hospital. We had, the lawyer came, he sat on my bed, told me he would handle everything, that everything would be under control. I had nothing to worry about other than to focus on getting better, surviving my surgeries, surviving the rehab, all those things. Once the first surgery was done, once I was out of and sent home, I never heard back from said law firm again. I completely disappeared. As it turned out, everyone was distraught that, they kind of forgot about me. It just became a hallmark of the way I was being treated, the way my case was being treated by this Toronto firm. So eventually, I just dropped them off, and I was consulting with a friend of mine who's a lawyer, not this type of law, a different type of law, and he suggested that. He said he'd make a phone call to a friend of his on my behalf. I received a phone call from someone here at the law firm after my friend had called, and they set up an appointment, since I was okay to start moving around by that time. And by this point, it had already been almost 2 years post-accident, well past my second surgery. And I came in, I met with Rob Findlay, met with a team actually. I met with Rob, met with Ryan, met with Sarah, a bunch of compassionate, well-educated people that we sat down, and they basically just had me explain my story from, as best I could remember, from day one to the present. What had happened, how it had happened, what I remember, what I was told, who told me what, all this kind of information. And then from there, they sort of started taking care of things. They started making sure that I was getting the proper rehab, making sure that I was that the insurance company wasn't denying claims like they had started doing, denying further treatment, denying devices, medical devices like orthotics and things like that, which they were now starting to do on a regular basis. So at that point, my file was transferred from these Toronto firms, and I should also mention that the firm I had called, or the firm that was called on my behalf from the hospital, they appeared to be a law firm, but they really aren't a law firm. What they were is they would collect information from people calling, and then they would farm those potential files out to other lawyers. So when I started getting calls from the other said lawyer, it was a completely different law firm, not even the one that was called on my behalf, which, I mean, for the lack of another word, it was very fishy. Anyway, my file was transferred over to Findlay Law, and from there they started handling everything, setting up the appropriate medical appointments, liaisoning with the insurance company, researching heavily. For example, if the insurance company wanted to send me on a medical exam, they would research and see who the medical examiner was, if he or she had a good, clean record. If they didn't, if it was somebody they wanted me, their client, going to. And I just immediately noticed a very big difference in how I was being treated. All of a sudden, I mattered. Rob, Sarah, Ryan started to know me by my first name. They started to know my family. They were in communication on a regular basis. I never felt like I fell between the cracks anymore. The optimum solution in a situation like mine is that the insurance companies and us come to a meeting and we agree for compensation for my injuries. That didn't happen in my case. The insurance company refused to recognize the extent of my injuries. Or no, I shouldn't say that. They recognized the extent of my injuries. What they didn't recognize is the extent of the impact of those injuries would have on my life going forward. And they kept wanting to offer the minimum amount of money possible to make me essentially go away. On the advice of my law firm, of Rob and Findlay Lawyers, we had gone through all the processes that were required, which meant we needed to go through arbitration, we needed to go through mediation, all these different steps to give the insurance company every opportunity to make us happy. And there's an insurance term that is called to make you whole once you have suffered a loss. So they had every opportunity to make me feel whole. They refused to do that. It ended up going into trial. And after a very difficult and stressful trial, the verdict was awarded to us. We won. And we won well. We won significantly more than what the insurance company was initially willing to pay. In fact, I should mention that I had offered, against the judgment of my lawyers, I had offered to my insurance company to settle for an amount at mediation, saying, look, let's agree to this amount and this goes away. And they refused. The amount that was awarded at trial was probably 3 or 4 times the total amount, 3 or 4 times more than what I was willing to settle at, which I guess explains why Rob and company didn't want me to make an offer. But the insurance company in their position refused to even acknowledge that. So by listening to my lawyers, by being with lawyers that actually looked out for my best interest, it paid out in my end, both personally and financially, substantially more than what it would have been under different circumstances. Different circumstances that were tossed at me by the Toronto law firm, who wanted me basically to settle for, comparatively now, a fraction of what the final settlement amount was. My experience dealing with Findlay overall, the outcome aside, we won. Great. They made a process that was extremely confusing, very convoluted, and highly intimidating go a lot smoother, a lot less intimidating than it could have been. I would not hesitate to let anybody in my situation to recommend that this is the place you call to get help. This is the place you call to guide you through the system. You need to have a good lawyer, a team like Findlay, who will go to bat for you and tell them, my client did the right thing, now it's your turn to do the right thing.